Zainab was folding Aisha's clothes when her phone rang. It was her mother, Mama Felicia. Her voice, warm but distant, carried the same cheer it always did around this time of year. "We're getting ready for Christmas, my dear. You know the whole family will be here." Amaka tunned everyone. Zainab smiled automatically. "That's lovely, Mama. Aisha's been asking about Grandpa's big Christmas tree. Should we come on the 23rd or 24th? There was a pause, a long, awkward silence that said more than words could. Then Mama Felicia sighed softly. "Ah, Zainab, the house is really full this year. You know how many guests we have. Maybe next year, Zainab's smile froze. She forced a small laugh. "Oh, I see. No problem, Mama. I understand." Her voice trembled slightly, but she managed to keep it steady. After the call ended, she just sat there, staring at her phone. The same house she once filled with music, lights, and laughter now had no room for her and her daughter. She used to cook the meals, hang the garlands, and wrap the gifts while everyone else took credit. But since her father's death, things had changed. Aisha ran up, holding a broken ornament. "Mama, are we going to Grandma's?" Zainab smiled faintly and pulled her close. "Not this year, my love. We'll make our own Christmas." Outside, the city lights twinkled, but inside Zainab's heart, something quietly broke. Yet beneath that pain, a small spark of strength began to flicker. The evening air in Abuja was chilly, the kind that made the curtains dance with every soft gust of wind. Inside their small rented apartment, Zainab and her 7-year-old daughter, Aisha, were hanging up strings of blinking Christmas lights. They flickered unevenly, sometimes glowing bright, sometimes dimming as the generator coughed in the background. "Mama, this one is not working," Aisha said, pouting as she tried to untangle a stubborn strand of lights. Zainab chuckled softly. "It's just tired, my love. Like me." She knelt beside her daughter, helping her fix it until one side of the wall shimmered with red and gold lights. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Carols drifted faintly from a neighbor's radio, mixing with the hum of the generator. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and the faint scent of kerosene from the small stove. It was a humble place, but Zainab was determined to fill it with warmth. As she stirred the pot of jollof rice, Aisha looked up from the small plastic table where she was drawing. "Mama, why aren't we going to Grandma's this year?" Zainab froze for a moment. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because, sweetheart, we're making our own Christmas this time. Just us." Aisha nodded slowly. "Will Santa still find us here?" Zainab laughed softly and brushed a hand through her daughter's curls. "He will. He always finds good girls." After dinner, when Aisha went to bed, Zainab sat quietly on the couch, her phone lighting up beside her. It was the family group chat, the one she hadn't muted because some part of her still hoped they'd remember her. Photo after photo filled the screen. Amaka in matching pajamas with her husband and kids, Tund holding up a giant roasted turkey. Her mother posing beside the grand tree Zainab had helped choose years ago. Laughter in every picture. Smiles. Togetherness. Zainab's chest tightened. For a second, she let herself imagine she was there, that her father was still alive, that her mother still looked at her with pride instead of quiet disappointment. She quickly wiped a tear before it could fall. Then suddenly a new message popped up in the chat. It was from Amaka. "We need your help." Zainab stared at the screen. Her heart skipped. Help. After telling her there was no room for her? The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came through. "The house help quit last minute. Everything is a mess. Can you come tomorrow morning to help us get things ready?" Zainab let out a small, bitter laugh. So that's what she was to them now, help. The same people who couldn't find her a bed were suddenly desperate for her hand. She looked around the small apartment, the crooked lights, the 2 plates on the table, Aisha's tiny blanket draped over the couch. It wasn't the mansion she grew up in, but it was home. Her phone buzzed again with another, "Please, Zainab." She didn't reply. "Not yet." She looked at Aisha sleeping peacefully and whispered to herself, "They'll see me differently this time." Outside, the night was cold, but inside, Zainab felt something stronger than sadness, a quiet fire beginning to burn. Zainab was washing dishes when her phone started ringing again. She wiped her hands on a towel and glanced at the screen. It was Amaka. For a moment, she thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello," she said quietly. "Zainab." Amaka's voice came through shaky and rushed, like she'd been crying. "Oh, thank God you picked up. The house helped quit this morning. Just walked out. And Christmas dinner is tomorrow. We have guests coming, Mama is panicking, and nothing is ready." Zainab frowned, confused. "Wait, I thought the house was full. You said there wasn't room for me and Aisha." There was a pause. Then Amaka sighed dramatically, pretending not to hear the jab. "Please, Zainab, you know you're the only one who can organize things. You always made everything perfect. Can you come over? Just to help us get things together." Zainab nearly dropped the phone. Her chest tightened with anger. So now they remembered her. not as family, but as a helper. The same people who told her there was no space suddenly needed her hands to fix their chaos. She wanted to shout, to ask where that same energy was when Aisha asked about Grandma's tree. But she took a deep breath. Her voice came out calm, steady. "I'll think about it," she said simply. Amaka sniffled on the other end. "Please do. Mama will be so relieved. You know how she gets when things aren't perfect." Then she hung up before Zainab could answer. Zainab stood still for a long time, staring at her phone. Her reflection shone faintly on the black screen. Tired eyes, but sharper than before. The nerve of them. The audacity. Behind her, Aisha was humming softly, decorating a small cardboard star with glitter and paper scraps. She looked so peaceful, so happy just to be there with her mother. "Mama, look. I made a star for Grandpa's tree." Zainab's heart softened. She knelt beside her daughter and smiled. "It's beautiful, my love." Aisha tilted her head curiously. "Who were you talking to?" Zainab hesitated. "Auntie Amaka. She needs help with Christmas." Aisha grinned. "Are we going?" Zainab looked at the tiny tree they'd made together, the one glowing with cheap lights, but filled with love. She thought of the mansion, the glitter, the judgmental stares, the whispers behind her back. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, "If we go, we won't be going as helpers. We'll go to say goodbye to something that's already broken." That night, as she tucked Aisha into bed, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced between memories and betrayal, laughter from childhood, her father's proud smile, her mother's cold tone on the phone. By morning, her decision was made. She would go, not for them, but for herself, to see everything clearly for the last time. Because sometimes, walking back into the place that hurt you is the only way to finally walk out free. The next morning, Zainab woke up early. She ironed her favorite Ankara dress, simple, elegant, the one her father had always said made her look strong. Aisha wore a red Christmas gown with white lace at the collar, her hair in neat little braids tied with gold ribbon. As Zainab packed some snacks and a small gift bag, she looked at herself in the mirror. She wasn't going there to serve. She was going to stand tall. The drive to the mansion was quiet, except for Christmas songs on the radio. Aisha sang along softly, while Zainab kept her eyes on the long road that led to her childhood home, the house her father built with pride, now filled with people who acted like she didn't exist. When they reached the tall gates, the security guard stepped forward, frowning slightly. He glanced at her car, old but freshly washed. "Madam, you are?" he asked politely but uncertainly. "Zainab, Madam Felicia's daughter," she replied, her tone calm. The guard hesitated, checking a list in his hand. "Okay, ma. Sorry, I didn't recognize the car." He opened the gate slowly, and she drove in. The sight of the mansion hit her like a wave. The glittering lights, the huge inflatable Santa at the entrance, the grand decorations she used to plan herself. Now it looked like something out of a magazine. As soon as she stepped out, her mother appeared at the doorway. "Zainab." Mama Felicia's voice sounded sharp with surprise before she quickly forced a smile. "Oh, you made it. Come in, come in. We were just getting things ready." Her tone was polite, but her eyes darted nervously toward the guests already mingling inside. Zainab smiled faintly. "Merry Christmas, Mama." Inside, the house smelled of roasted chicken, candles, and imported perfume. Laughter filled the air, Amaka posing for pictures, Tun talking loudly about business deals, relatives she barely knew sipping wine. Every corner sparkled with luxury, gold ribbons, white roses, even a snow machine humming quietly in the... Aisha gasped in wonder. "Wow, Mama, it's so beautiful," she said, running toward her cousin. But before Zainab could follow, she heard a small, sharp whisper that froze her. Amaka's son leaned close to Aisha and said, "Granny said you don't belong here." Aisha blinked, confused. "What?" The boy shrugged. "That's what she said. This house is for us." Then he ran off, laughing. Zainab's smile faltered. Her heart twisted painfully as she watched her daughter's bright face fall, her small hands clutching the toy she'd brought to share. She turned slowly and looked around the grand room, the same room where she used to hang stockings and sneak extra cookies for everyone. Now she stood there as if she were an outsider in her own story. That's when it hit her. They hadn't just excluded her, they had rewritten her. To them, she wasn't Zainab, the daughter who kept the family together after her father's death. She was the struggling one, the sister people pitted quietly but never truly respected. Zainab straightened her shoulders, forcing a calm smile. If they wanted to see the version of her they'd created, fine. But deep down, she knew this visit wouldn't end the way they expected. Dinner was supposed to be cheerful, but the air around the long dining table felt tight, too perfect, too practiced. The chandelier shimmered above, the silverware gleamed, and the smell of roasted chicken and jollof rice filled the room. But Zainab could feel the unspoken tension sitting right beside her. Tun stood up with a wine glass in hand, grinning. "A toast," he announced loudly, "to family, hard work, and success." Everyone clapped and cheered. Zainab lifted her glass too, forcing a polite smile, even though no one was really looking at her. Their mother, Mama Felicia, turned proudly toward Amaka. And of course, to my darling daughter and her husband. I'm so proud of you too. That new house is a blessing. You've worked so hard. Amaka giggled, pretending to be humble. Thank you, Mama. It hasn't been easy, but we thank God. Zainab just kept her head down, cutting into her food quietly. No one mentioned her. No one even asked how she was doing. Then Amaka turned to her with a sweet but sharp smile. At least you have a job, right? That's something. The room went silent for a second, that kind of silence that burns. Zainab looked up slowly. Amaka's tone was light, but her eyes carried mockery. Before Zainab could respond, Mama Felicia added, Yes, we all help where we can. Maybe next year, you'll find a husband who can support you better. Laughter erupted around the table, soft at first, then louder. Someone joked, Amen to that. Even Aisha stopped eating. She looked up at her mother with wide eyes, confused. Mama, why are they laughing? She whispered. Zainab felt her throat tighten. Her chest burned, but she smiled at Aisha and whispered back, It's okay, sweetheart. Eat your food. But it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. She pushed her chair back quietly. Excuse me, she said, keeping her voice steady. The laughter died down just a little, but no one tried to stop her. She walked outside into the cool evening air, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. The night sky was clear, full of stars. From inside, she could still hear the laughter, muffled but sharp enough to pierce. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Then she heard it, voices behind the slightly open window. Her siblings. She's always so emotional, Tun said with a smirk in his voice. Honestly, Amaka added, she should be grateful we even invited her this year. You know how Mama hates drama. Zainab froze. Every word hit like a slap. Grateful? For what? Being humiliated at the same table where she once led prayers before dinner. She stepped back from the window, blinking away tears. Her hands trembled, but there was something new in her heart now. Not pain, but resolve. For years, she'd swallowed her pride for the sake of peace. But tonight, she realized something had shifted. The laughter, the whispers, they weren't just mean. They were a reminder that she didn't belong in their version of family. As she looked out into the night, the Christmas lights from inside reflected faintly in her eyes. She whispered softly to herself, Never again. The party was over, but the noise still echoed in Zainab's head. The laughter, the toasts, the cruel jokes that had sliced through her like glass. Most of the guests had left, and the mansion was finally quiet. Aisha was asleep on the couch, curled up under her small shawl. Zainab decided to stay behind and help her mother clean up, mostly because she needed something to do with her shaking hand. In the dining room, half-empty glasses and plates covered the table. Zainab silently gathered them, moving like a ghost through the mess. Mama Felicia sat at the head of the table, counting envelopes and flipping through some papers, receipts, bills, and donation notes from the event. Zainab noticed one envelope sticking out from the pile. Something about it caught her eye. Her father's name was printed at the top. Account of Mr. Emmanuel Felicia. Her heart gave a small jump. She reached for it casually, pretending to tidy the papers. Then she saw it, a bank transfer slip. A large one. The date made her breath catch. 3 days before her father passed away. And the name written in bold on the recipient line made her knees go weak. Beneficiary, Amaka Okoro. The amount was massive, too large to be a simple gift. And at the bottom, the reference line read, For future family support, Aisha's education fund. Zainab froze. Her father had told her about this before he died. He'd said, Don't worry about Aisha's school, my daughter. I've set something aside for her future. She had trusted that promise like a sacred truth. But now the proof was in her hands. The money had gone to Amaka instead. She looked up slowly. Mama, she said quietly, her voice trembling. What is this? Her mother stiffened. What? This transfer. From Daddy's account. To Amaka. She slid the paper across the table. Why? Mama Felicia's eyes darted away. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her wrapper. Your sister needed it more, she said quickly, avoiding her daughter's gaze. Her husband was struggling then. You always manage somehow. Zainab stared at her, completely still. The air in the room felt heavy, like the walls themselves were closing in. So you gave away my daughter's future because Amaka needed new furniture and a bigger car? Don't speak to me like that, her mother snapped, her voice sharp with guilt and anger. Everything I do is for this family. You wouldn't understand. Zainab's voice cracked, but she didn't look away. You're right. I don't understand how a mother can betray her own child. How you can take what Daddy promised me, what he promised Aisha, and give it away. Mama Felicia's face softened for a second, but she said nothing. The silence between them said everything. Zainab folded the paper gently, her hands trembling. He trusted you, she whispered, and you chose her. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the dining room, her heart pounding. The betrayal was deeper than any insult her family had ever thrown at her. Her father's last gift, his dying wish, had been stolen. And as she looked at her sleeping daughter, she made a silent vow. They had taken enough from her. Now, it was time to take back what was rightfully hers. Morning sunlight poured through the mansion's glass windows, warm and golden, but it couldn't melt the cold silence between Zainab and her mother. Zainab barely slept that night. She kept replaying her mother's words in her head. Your sister needed it more. You always manage somehow. Those words echoed like a wound that wouldn't close. By breakfast, she had made up her mind. She wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. The family gathered around the long dining table again. Same laughter, same pretended closeness. Amaka was at the center of it all, glowing in her new lace dress, talking loudly about her latest achievement. Oh, my catering business is doing so well, she bragged. We just got another big contract in Lagos. God is truly faithful. Tun nodded, clapping her shoulder. That's great, Amaka. You've really built something amazing. Even Mama Felicia smiled proudly. She's worked very hard. I always knew she'd do something big. Zainab stirred her tea quietly, her eyes fixed on Amaka. Something in her sister's tone made her pause. So, how did you get started again? She asked calmly. Amaka grinned. Oh, it was all thanks to a private investor who believed in me. Someone who saw my potential. She said it with a smirk, proud and polished. Zainab's chest burned. A private investor? She almost laughed. The so-called investor was her late father, the man who'd promised to fund his granddaughter's future, not Amaka's business. Her patience broke. Zainab stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the tiled floor. The laughter faded. All eyes turned to her. She reached into her purse and pulled out the folded paper, the bank transfer receipt she had found the night before. Is this the investor you're talking about? She asked, her voice calm but sharp. Amaka blinked. What do you mean? Zainab held up the paper. This money came from Daddy's account, 3 days before he died. It was meant for Aisha's education, not your catering business. The room went completely silent. Mama Felicia's face hardened instantly. Zainab, lower your voice. We don't discuss private matters at the table. Zainab ignored her. Private? You made it private when you stole it. When you decided one daughter deserved everything, and the other was expected to just survive. Amaka's face crumbled. I didn't steal anything. Mama said. Exactly. Zainab cut her off. Mama said. Mama decided. And you both lied to me. Amaka's fake tears started falling. You're ruining Christmas. Zainab's voice rose, but it wasn't anger. It was truth breaking free. Christmas was ruined the day this family chose greed over love. The day you told me there was no room for me, but you made plenty of space for lies. She turned to her mother, who sat frozen, her pride shattered but too stubborn to admit it. You didn't just betray me, Zainab said quietly. You betrayed Daddy's trust. No one spoke. Even Tund, who always had something to say, stared at his plate. Zainab folded the paper, slipped it back into her purse, and took Aisha's hand. Her daughter looked up at her with wide, brave eyes. Come on, sweetheart, she said softly. We're going home. As they walked out of the mansion, the sound of Amaka's sobbing echoed behind them, fake and pitiful. But Zainab didn't look back. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from keeping quiet. It comes from finally saying what should have been said all along, and walking away with your dignity intact. The days after that explosive morning felt like walking through a storm. Zainab had barely reached home when her phone started buzzing nonstop. Calls, texts, voice notes, all carrying the same message. How could you embarrass your family like that? Her aunt from Abuja called first, shouting before Zainab could even say hello. Zainab, how could you disgrace your mother like that in front of everyone? We all have problems, you don't air them outside. Zainab said nothing. She just stared out the window, watching the evening rain slide down the glass. She had spent her entire life being quiet, being polite, being the good one. And what had that earned her? Lies and betrayal. By the next day, the gossip had spread everywhere. Neighbors whispered when she passed by. Old classmates sent her messages pretending to check in, but she could feel the curiosity behind their words. On social media, her siblings posted smiling photos from the Christmas dinner, captioned with things like "Family is everything, red heart," and "Grateful for love and laughter." It was like they were rewriting the story, pretending nothing happened. At first, it hurt. It hurt so much that Zainab deleted all her apps and stayed off her phone. She cooked simple meals for Aisha, tried to stay calm, but some nights she cried until her pillow was wet. Then something unexpected started happening. Her cousin Kemi called quietly one evening. Z, I heard what happened. You were right to speak up. I've seen how they treat you all these years. Then another message came from a family friend. Your father always spoke highly of you. Don't let them twist his memory. Little by little, the voices changed. Instead of shame, Zainab started hearing support. A few days later, a man in a crisp gray suit came to her small apartment. He introduced himself as Barrister Okeke, her late father's lawyer. His tone was kind but firm. Your father's will clearly stated that the remaining funds were to support Aisha's future. No one had the right to move that money without your consent. Zainab blinked in disbelief. So, you're saying I can fight this? Yes, he said, nodding. And you should. Not just for the money, for the truth. For the first time in weeks, Zainab didn't cry. She sat up straighter, a spark lighting in her chest. She realized she wasn't powerless. Not anymore. That night, she opened her old notebook and began writing everything down. Dates, transfers, promises, conversations. Every piece of the puzzle her family thought she would never piece together. Aisha peeked into the room and asked softly, Mama, are we okay now? Zainab smiled gently. Not yet, my love, but we will be. Outside, the storm still raged, the gossip, the lies, the noise, but Zainab was no longer afraid of it. She had something stronger now, a plan, a purpose, and the courage to fight back. For years, they had silenced her with guilt. Now, she was finally ready to let her truth speak louder than their lies. Months later, the courtroom was silent as the judge read the final decision. Zainab sat with her hands trembling, her heart racing so fast she could hear it in her ears. Then the words came. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Zainab Yusuf. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. Barrister Okeke smiled beside her and whispered, You did it, Zainab. Justice is yours. The judgment was clear. Amaka had committed financial fraud by secretly transferring funds meant for Aisha's education. The court ordered restitution and exposed the cover-up that her mother had silently supported. The story quickly spread, this time not as gossip but as truth. Zainab had faced them and won. Her mother never showed up to the hearing. She couldn't face the shame. Even when the verdict was announced, she stayed quiet, pretending to be sick at home. But Zainab didn't hold on to anger anymore. She had already learned that peace comes when you stop begging for love from people who refuse to give it. When the restitution money arrived, Zainab didn't rush to spend it. Instead, she sat down with Aisha and said, We're going to use this wisely, not just for us, but for others too. With Barrister Okeke's help, she started a small community scholarship fund in her father's name, the Yusuf Education Trust. It was simple at first, helping just a few children from the neighborhood, but to Zainab, it felt like healing. It was a way to honor her father's true wish, to see children have the education he wanted for his granddaughter. The following Christmas arrived quietly, but this time the air felt different. No tension, no fake smiles, just peace. Zainab and Aisha decorated their little apartment again, just like the year before. Only this time, it wasn't lonely. The living room was full of neighborhood kids, laughing, playing, helping hang colorful paper ornaments on a small Christmas tree. Someone had brought puff puff, another brought juice. Laughter filled every corner. Aisha, now taller and more confident, stood on a stool to place the small angel on top of the tree. She looked down at her mother with a bright smile and said softly, Grandpa would be proud of you. Zainab felt her eyes fill with tears, but this time they were tears of joy. She smiled and pulled her daughter close. I think he's smiling right now, she whispered. As the night went on, carols played softly in the background, the generator hummed, and the scent of jollof rice filled the room. Zainab looked around at the warm lights, the laughter, the happiness, all built from the pain she once thought would break her. She finally realized something powerful. She hadn't lost her family. She had simply built a better one, right here with love, honesty, and peace. And that Christmas, for the first time in years, she truly felt at home. A year later, on a quiet December morning, Zainab was helping Aisha wrap gifts for the neighborhood kids when there was a soft knock at the door. She opened it and froze. Standing outside were her mother and Amaka. Both looked different, not polished or proud like before, but tired, humbled, and uncertain. Her mother's eyes were red, and Amaka clutched a small wrapped gift in her hand. For a moment, no one spoke. Then her mother said softly, Zainab, we came to see you. To talk. Maybe reconnect. Zainab stood still, her heart heavy but calm. A year ago, those words would have made her cry. Now they only made her think. She looked at them, the people who once told her there was no room for her, and saw not power, but weakness. She finally said, Forgiveness isn't free. It's earned. Her mother looked down, ashamed. Amaka started to cry quietly. Zainab sighed and opened the door wider. Come in, she said, her tone gentle but firm. Not because everything is okay, but because I want you to see what real family looks like. Inside, the apartment was glowing with Christmas lights. The air smelled of fried plantain and jollof rice. Aisha was laughing with the neighborhood kids, showing them how to fold paper stars. The room felt alive, warm, bright, safe. Amaka looked around, wiping her eyes. You've built something beautiful, she whispered. Zainab nodded. Yes, because I learned love isn't about status or control. It's about respect. As the evening light poured in, the camera would slowly pan across the room. the laughter, the decorations, the quiet peace. And Zainab's voice would be heard, calm and strong. Sometimes, family doesn't mean who shares your blood. It means who stays when the world says there's no room for you. The final shot lingers on their small, glowing home, filled not with wealth, but with love, healing, and the sound of hope.